Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nowley. In this first chapter of Chem 11, I'll be discussing the following concepts: scientific method, measurements in chemistry, and then systems of units that we use in chemistry. But before we can get started on these topics, I want to give a very brief introduction to why you need to study chemistry in the first place and what is the main concept that you'll be learning again and again in this class over the semester. First thing about chemistry that you need to know is that it's a very central part of science. And a lot of other parts of sciences, for example, geology, medicine, biology, biochemistry, physics, and other parts of sciences are centrally connected to chemistry. Chemistry plays an important role for you to be able to understand what happens in biology and therefore what happens in medicine and biochemistry. A lot of things that you do in engineering, in environmental sciences, geology. So as a result of that, it's quite important to understand chemistry and have chemistry as a basic set of tools that you can apply to the major that you're planning to go into later in your college years, even if you don't plan to major in chemistry. Now, one of the another question that people often ask me is, why do I have to take this chem course, which is the first semester of chemistry? So there are several reasons for this, but I'm going to list some of the main ones here. The first one is really, you're going to learn a skill that's very valuable for you throughout your life, whether you're going to continue in the sciences or not. And this is the analytical skill, which is the ability to take a problem that you encounter and break it down to its separate components, simpler components, and then analyze those components separately and solve the problems of each of those components. And this is not easy to do, but with practice, this is something that everybody can do. So, you'll be facing a lot of word problems in chemistry. In fact, all the problems you'll see are word problems. And you have to read the problem in front of you and think about what it is that the problem is asking you and take them apart into simpler components that you can then solve individually and then later on combine together to solve the bigger problem. So that's the second part of this skill that you learn in Chem 11 is the critical thinking skill. In chemistry, you'll learn many different concepts that are important. And the goal is at some point you'll be able to take some of these concepts, if you're given a problem, take some of these concepts and think about which of the following concepts would apply to this particular problem. And this is, critical thinking skill. This is taking something that's you've been given, but then applying it in a new way to solve a new problem. So, the practice that you'll be doing in the textbook, homework questions, and the questions that I cover in class would allow you to master the skill fairly well. Okay, break down a problem, separate components. But to actually look at a new problem and taking concepts you've learned and applying it to solve this new problem is really something that you have to kind of work on yourself. We're going to try to do that in class. We'll take a problem, think about what concepts it is that we can apply to this particular problem. But a lot of times, we'll have a problem that's related to a particular topic. So it's sort of not quite exactly what you'll see in real life. But in real life, you'll have a problem, and nobody's going to tell you what concepts you have to use. And your goal is to basically use the concepts that you have learn and apply them to solve that particular new problem. So that's a much harder skill than the analytical skill. But again, with practice, is something that you'll be able to do over time. Of course, I also want to be able to have you appreciate how much chemistry plays a role in your everyday life. From the things you eat every day, the fuel that your car uses for you to take you from home to school, the different reactions that are happening in the atmosphere, in the water, and so on. All of those involve chemistry, and hopefully in the different examples that we go through in this class, you'll be able to see how chemistry impacts everyday life and learn something from that. And, my long-term goal is, of course, to have you be interested in the sciences. If you don't decide to major in the sciences, at least you'll have some appreciation for it. And maybe when you go and read a newspaper article on, certain contaminants in the environment, or some, drugs that's just discovered to cure cancer, you'd be able to have a deeper understanding of what that discovery is, and what the information is useful for. So before we go on further to the actual concepts of chemistry, I want to talk about this idea in chemistry that you have to understand. Okay, what you're going to be learning throughout the semester is really this relationship between what we call properties of matter. In other words, whether something is flammable, whether something is can react with certain substances, whether it boils at 100 degrees or 800 degrees. All of these things, properties of matter, is related to how they're made up in terms of the atoms that make that particular sample of matter. Okay, and the composition here refers to the type of atoms, the type of molecules, and in the end the number of atoms, type, the types, and so on. All of those result in the different properties that we see. So the fact that wood is, can be burned and generate certain byproducts when you burn it is because wood is composed of certain types of atoms, and there is a certain number of atoms. The fact that sugar, gasoline burns, that's due to the fact that they're composed by certain type of atoms and certain type of certain type of molecules, certain type of atoms, certain number of atoms. Okay, so this is something that you need to really get at, understand about chemistry. Now, the other thing that you want to understand is the reason, why these atoms are arranged a certain way, and that these atoms tend to make a molecule together, or an ionic compound together, is because there are certain things about the electrons in these atoms that allows them to make those bonds, those chemical bonds, or those arrangements. Okay, so in other words, the base, the basic structure that underlies all of these atoms is their electron configuration, their electronic structure. Okay, if we can understand electronic structure, that will take us to understand atomic structure, and thereby understand how molecules, bigger stuff, are composed of. And eventually that will take us to understanding how different materials behave, okay, and the properties of those materials. So this is really the basic concept in chemistry. You want to understand that the electronic structure, which is how the electrons are arranged in these atoms, basically tells you everything about the properties of matter that you're going to learn. Okay, now in the next videos, we're going to go into chemistry and start talking about some of the basic concepts.